Sadly here, the original host of Goosebumps. And I want you to know, this here is Multi-Voice Reviewer's review of one of his Goosebumps favorite stories of all time. So sadly he doesn't have the third movie of the Goosebumps movie, but at least he's going to review something that he loves so much, Attack of the Mutant. Although there's going to be a lot of superhero reference, so you should bear with him on that one. If not, then beware, you're in for a scare. Lord knows I've been in the Goosebump fan club for a long time, and this ring shows exactly how long I've been a member. Starting to look a lot like R.L. Stine now. And of course you're wondering why I have a Batman pin. I'll explain to you later. Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm the Multi-Voice Reviewer. I have many voices, but one opinion. And today, this is going to be a different topic I'm going to be talking about. And I'm going to be reviewing one of my favorite story of all time. And it's one of my, if some of you remember my my Goosebumps reviews I've done, I always mention Attack of the Mutant so many times. I just love the story so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be reviewing one of R.L. Stine's greatest classic stories that he's written. Greatest and one of my favorite stories of all time is this: Goosebumps, Attack of the Mutant. He is no superhero, he's a supervillain. Now, why do I talk about this story so much? Well, allow me to elaborate. You see, in the story, it talks about a kid who goes. His real name is Bradley, but everybody calls him Skipper Matthews. And one thing about him is he's a comic book collector. Kind of sounds a lot like how I am. I've been a comic book collector since I was 16, as I seem to remember, either 16 or 17. I became a huge comic book nut. I love comic books. Comic books is my passion, folks. Of course, some of you have read, watched some of my videos. I always like reviewing comic book characters that nobody never even heard of. And, Attack of the Mutant is my all-time favorite because if you ever think about it, if you're a superhero, it'll be really cool. You have all these superpowers, and when you see a bad guy, the villain, who's going to do something evil, you'll be like, no problem. I could deal with this guy with my hands tied. You're really brave. But what if you were just an average Joe, and the villain thinks of you as a superhero and would stop at nothing to try to destroy you? This exactly is the premise of this book. You see, Skipper Matthew, he's a comic book collector, but he reads the comic book of his favorite villain. Heck, even my villain is the Joker, but his favorite villain is this character, the Masked Mutant. And what makes him so terrifying is he's a shapeshifter. He can change himself into anything is solid. He can change himself to any animal or any object or any person. And one thing I also remember that I did watch, Goosebumps episode, Attack of the Mutant. Now, this is the DVD picture of it. Now, the reason why I don't have the DVD and just have a printout picture, well, it was because I did saw the DVD, but the problem was it was too expensive for me to buy it. So I had to wait till next time, but after the next time, never saw it again. and it was a 2-part episode. I would have loved to have this on DVD. I would have done anything to get that on DVD. Anything. But since I'm going to be talking about the episode and the book, here's the thing. You see, in the book, there is one character that was in the book but never in the episode. He has a little 9-year-old sister named Mitzi. And at the scene, Skipper was reading his Masked Mutant comic book, and there was a character called Sponge Life who was getting strangled by the Masked Mutant, who turned himself into an octopus. But when he was about ready to turn the page, he felt something cold and slimy wrap around his neck. It was Mitzi. Her hand was so cold because she put it in the refrigerator so they could be cold. But also, she was sent up by her dad because he said if he's reading a comic book instead of doing his homework, he's in big trouble. Now, in the episode, they skip Mitzi and have his mom show up and telling him. Now, they had different... I mean, this is how they describe... Now, those are Skipper's parents. Now, the difference between the parents in the episode and in the book, the father, he's pretty much the same way in the book. He's always like, that's all you think about night and day, Skipper. Comics. Comics! It isn't healthy! Really, I don't want to hear another word about comics. You understand me? But the mother, she just didn't pay attention on what's going on. Heck, in the episode, they made her worse. She keeps reading romance novels. She's always trapped in her own world reading romance novels. The hell? And of course, he also has a best friend who goes by the name of Wilson. Now, the difference between the book and the episode... In the book, Wilson is tall, skinny, and blonde. But in the episode, that's Wilson. He is short, nerdy, wears glasses, and the difference between the book and the episode, in the book he collects rubber stamps, but in the episode he collects rocks. And that's Skipper over here. And he looks exactly how the book described him. Dark-haired, chubby kid. And of course, one thing I also remember that they mentioned in the book, but they never showed it. They never showed it on the episode. Heck, they didn't even mention it on the audiobook I have on cassette. That on his wall, he has 2 of the superhero pictures based from his 2 favorite comic book artists. He has the picture of Captain America from Jack Kirby, and Spawn from Ted McFarlane. You know, I should be reviewing Spawn sooner or later. Captain America, on the other hand, if I come to it, I'll probably do review Captain America. But right now, let's talk about the matters in hand. Of course, on the audiobook and in the book itself, that they didn't mention in the episode, is that he said not like Silver Swan's planet. Now, the only character I ever heard of Silver Swan, she's a villain, a Wonder Woman villain. But according to this, the Silver Swan's supposed to be a superhero. And of course, there is Orca 3. The only Orca I ever heard is one of Batman's villains, a woman who turns into a human killer whale. And of course, he also mentions Star Wolf, which is, she's a superhero who is Native American. I don't know much about her, so I should do more research on this one. But that was mentioned in the book, but never been mentioned in the episodes nor in the audio. Anyway, Skipper decided to go to his orthodontist appointment, and all of a sudden, he sees a young girl named Libby. And, now, she has green eyes and light freckles on her nose and red hair. That's what they describe her in the book. But in the episode, Libby, she's a blonde. No freckles. And I think her eyes are blue. Well, beggars can't be choosers on looks, right? Anyway, Libby Zax, she asked him what's his name. He said it was Skip. His name is Skipper. And she said, "Do you live on a boat or something?" And he said, "It's kind of a dumb name, but better than my real name, Bradley. When I was a little kid, I always in a hurry, so I used to skip a lot. That's why they call me Skipper." And she was like, cute. And then, when she was asking him where is he going, he didn't want to tell her that he had to go to an orthodontist appointment, so he decided to tell her that he's going to the comic book store. And she was like, "You collect comics? So am I." And according to the book, Skipper thought to himself, it's his turn to be surprised because most of the comic book collectors that he knows are boys. Not true, actually. Not true, because I've been seeing a couple of comic book collectors who are girls, and there are girls who do like some superheroes. Some of them like bad boy superheroes or goody good superheroes. I hear a lot of girls always say that Superman and Thor is hot. So they say. You know what, girls? You should you should leave a comment down below, since now my comments are turned on and you can leave a comment down on my video. You girls can ask me this question. Which one of you girls think which superhero is hot? Superman or Thor? You make the call. And I know most of the Filipino girls, they like Batman, which I'm a huge fan of. And I always get the Filipino girls' attention sometimes when I dressed up as Batman. And always love it when I do my "I am vengeance, I am the night, I am Batman!" I just love doing that. That's why I'm Batman. Anyway, he was surprised, so he asked him what kind of comic books does she collect. She said High School Harry and Beanhead. She collects the digest-sized ones and some of the regular ones. Now, I figured out, according to legal purpose, what she really meant is she collects Archie comics and Jughead. High School Archie and Jughead comics. He said and of course Skipper says those comics are for babies. To me, I think they're more like preteen and teenagers who reads those comics, who are not into the superhero stuff, but more into teenager stuff. Although now Archie comics are now becoming more mature ever since they made that series called Riverdale. And if any of you ever want to see my review of the Archie comics, I'll probably send the link down below. Because I did do a review about the Archie stuff. Anyway, back to the thing. Now Skipper didn't recognize any of the stores, so he thought he was going the wrong way. So he hits the bell, and he thought he lost a stop, and then he figured out that Libby lives 2 blocks down the other way, and he found something that got his breath caught to his throat. He sees this building, and it's the secret headquarters building to the Masked Mutant. Huh. And throughout the entire story, and spoilers for those of you who haven't read it, throughout the whole story, the next day he went to the building. He thought it was vanished or somebody tore it down, but it turns out that the Masked Mutant threw an invisibility headquarters around the building. So even though it looked like an empty lot, he walked into it, and there was a secret headquarters building, and Libby joined with him. He went to the elevators and peeked out. They both got lost, and Skipper, he got hit by some kind of beam, ran over his body. and he felt like this tingling feeling. But when he was asking Libby what was that, she said she didn't feel anything. Tried to scare him? Trying to scare her or something? Oh, and here's another thing. Now, in the episode, they changed the name, and the name escapes me on the episode. But in the book, he told Wilson about the exact same building as in the comic book. And Wilson said, "Tell me, who draws a Masked Mutant?" And he said, "Jimmy Steranko, of course." Now, according to my history, I do a lot of histories on comic book stuff, and the character Steranko, I mean, in the book he's called Jimmy Steranko, but the artist and writer I know is, of course, none other than that he was kind of mentioning Jim Steranko. Now, Jim Steranko, he was like the rock star of comic books, and the comic books, what put his comic book on the map is, of course, the psychedelic artwork of Nick Fury and the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, that's right. My name is Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it was Jim Steranko who made my legacy greater. I was once a World War II soldier with my troops called the Howling Commandos, and now I promoted myself as a top secret agent called S.H.I.E.L.D. And of course, Jim Steranko made my legacy really awesome. Although I do have one problem, though. Why did the Ultimate comic books make me look more like Samuel L. Jackson, and now the MCU have me played by Samuel L. Jackson? Well, it could have been worse. They would have continued on the idea of having me played by David Hasselhoff. Oh well, this is Nick Fury, signing off. Thank you, Mr. Fury. Sometimes when I do a lot of comic book stuff, some of my comic book characters do come to life. Exactly what this story is referencing. Of course, I have my deal with the Joker now and then. But anyway, his friend Wilson thought that Jimmy Steranko got the idea of the headquarters because he was driving down the street, saw the building, looks at it and say, what a neat looking building. This building make a perfect secret headquarters to the Masked Mutant. So pretty much Wilson figured out that he saw the building, liked it, and copied it when he drew the headquarters. It made like a too much sense, actually. But anyway, he decided went into the building, took a couple of elevators, him and Libby got lost, and all of a sudden, here was the biggest shocker. He saw sketches and pictures of all the League of Good Guys and the Masked Mutant. And one thing that shocked the crap out of him, he saw sketches of himself. And he couldn't believe it. And he tried to tell Libby about it, but she doesn't believe him. So as he went home, he has a new comic book that he got from the mail. He looked into it, and much to his shock, he sees himself sneaking into the Masked Mutant's building. It was definitely him. So he ran down the stairs to the kitchen. His father is kind of busy cutting the onions, and now he's crying. This is why I always wear goggles every time I'm cutting onions. And his mom is bent over trying to get the oven to lit. But different between the episode and the story, the mother was bent over trying to get the oven to lit. But in the episode, she was too busy reading her romance novels. Again. While the father, just like in the book, cutting onions and crying. He tries to tell his family about it. The father, I mean, his eyes are so full of tears, he cannot see a thing. He was like, "I can't see a thing. Get away from me. Can't you see what this onion is doing to my eyes?" And his mother, on the other hand, she just took a quick glance and like, "Yes, Skipper, it does look a little like you." And then they just went back to their own business. If I see myself in a comic book, I would have get my grandma's attention and she would have been really shocked. Well, give her undivided attention, if she's not too busy watching those crime shows. That's what my grandma does. She watched a lot of crime shows. Anyway, and of course he sees the galloping gazelle in the comic. And he read on his balloon, only the boy can save him now. So now he decided to go back to the building. Go back to the building and see if this is really happening. And then there was one scene, it wasn't in the episode, but it was in the book. He went into a room where it's kind of looked like he was in a fog. Like, everything looks completely gray and washed out. And last time he remembers seeing that room, it used to be a locker room with a lot of costumes of all of his villains who works for him. But now it's just all gray and washed out. Huh. But, anyway, he sees the galloping gazelle. Now, in the episode, here's what the galloping gazelle looked like. And the galloping gazelle in the episode is played by none other than the late, great Adam West. That's right, chum. I, Adam West, played the galloping gazelle in the episode. But another thing you guys don't know, I also did the voice of the galloping gazelle on the PC game. I'll get to the PC game later, folks. And just like in the comic book, just like in the novel, actually, and the episode, Skipper untied the ropes that it was binding him, and they really went through all the stairs, and then they finally went to the Masked Mutant's headquarters, his office. Went to his office. Although in the episode, they went to the Masked Mutant's lair. But anyway, the Masked Mutant shows up. Now, unlike the way they designed him in the book, what he looked like in the episode, he looks more like this. Now, the Galloping Gazelle was planning to deal with the Masked Mutant by running circles around him faster and faster until he'll become a raging tornado and he'll be swept away from ever. And when Galloping Gazelle was planning to do that, the Masked Mutant just stuck his foot out and tripped him. And then, one thing they did in the episode, in the book it was different. The Masked Mutant shapeshift himself into a snarling leopard and start tearing his costume and bit the end of his mask until the Galloping Gazelle woke up and it was like, I'm out of here. You're on your own, kid. But in the episode, he just woke up after he got tripped by him and then says, I'm out of here. You're on your own, kid. What a freaking coward! When you're a superhero, you do not cower. One thing about being a superhero is you always have to be brave, no matter what. I would say he's a failure of a superhero. Sheesh. But anyway, the Masked Mutant stared at Skipper, and he kept going on saying, So, what are your powers, kid? What are your powers? Do you shrink down to a tiny bug? Is that your secret? You burst into flames? Is that your power? Are you magnetic? Or you're a mind fogger? Come on, kid, come on, answer me! What is your power? But the Masked Mutant didn't ask him all those questions. He just made himself disappear in the episode. And then here's what the story goes. Now, this is from the book and not from the episode. Libby showed up and saw the Masked Mutant. The Masked Mutant was hoisting Skipper up and about ready to hurl to his doom, but when Libby showed up, she held up a toy pistol, and she said, it looks like a toy, but it's a molecule melter. And the Masked Mutant was like, Put down the toy, it can't hurt you. It can't help you. And she said, I'm not kidding, this isn't a toy, this really is a molecule melter. And then when she shoot the laser at him, all of a sudden, the Masked Mutant started to melt. And Skipper was like, It worked! And Libby was like, Of course it worked. I warned him it was a molecule melter, he wouldn't listen. Huh. But sadly, Libby pointed the gun at Skipper, and she said, You're disappearing next. I'm not Libby. I hate to break the news to you, Skipper, but there is no Libby. And then it turns out that the girl named Libby that Skipper was hanging out with, she didn't really exist. She was hanging out with the Masked Mutant all along. And the only reason why he had Skipper get involved in this comic book world, he said, "It's so hard for me to find enemies in my next stories. I'm always looking for new foes. And that's why I was pleased when I discovered you. When you got into my headquarters building, I knew you were right. I knew you were going to plan to start a story, but your story is over. Your part has come to an end." And Skipper decided to outsmart the mutant by saying, "I'm not Skipper. There is no Skipper Matthews. I'm the colossal Elastic Boy." "Elastic Boy? I thought you looked familiar." Now, that was a character he made up. There was no Elastic Boy. Not that I know of. And all of a sudden, now this one I thought it was really corny, because this is something what wrestlers would say, where the Masked Mutant says, "I'm gonna tear you to pieces, and then tear your pieces into tiny pieces." That's what a wrestler will always say to his opponent. "You know, I'm gonna get you, and I'm gonna open up a fresh can of whoop ass on you." That is so silly. Anyway, Skipper says, "I can't be torn into pieces. I bend, but I don't break. There's only one thing I can be destroyed." And the Masked Mutant was like, "What's that?" "By sulfuric acid." Oops, did I say sulfuric acid? I didn't mean to get that to slip out. But here is the thing. You see, Skipper, while reading the Masked Mutant comics, he know about the mutant's weakness. You see, he can shapeshift into anything that is solid. Plants, animals, human beings, objects, items, anything. But here's the problem. He tricked him by turning him into a liquid. But once he turns into a liquid, he cannot change back. And he tricked him by turning him into sulfuric acid. And everybody knows acid eats through anything and never stays together. So, he defeated him. Now, there was something different between the episode and the book. In the book, Mitzi was there, and he wanted to play a little game of Frisbee, his way of celebrating his victory. So, him and his sister plays a little game of Frisbee outside for a while, and then all of a sudden got hungry. And Libby said, "Mom left some chocolate cake on the counter." And to him, chocolate cake just sounded just right. And as he got the knife, and Libby brought out the cake, and, oh no, not Libby, Mitzi. And Mitzi said, "Hey, don't make my slice bigger than mine." And Skipper said, "Mitzi, I promise I won't cheat you." Now, he was about ready to cut the cake, and it slipped, and it cut his hand. But here's the funny part. What was coming out of his cut in the book? Not blood, but tiny dots of red, blue, and yellow ink. It turns out, in the book and in the episode, the Masked Mutant tell him that he's a comic book character because the beam it shot him and the tingling feeling that he had, it was a scanner. Scanned his entire body, turning him into a real person to a comic book character. So he's made of tiny dots of red, blue, and yellow ink. So when he got cut on his hand, red, blue, and black ink came out of his hand. And his sister was like, "Look at that, cool!" And he said to Mitzi, "Where's that new Masked Mutant comic?" Because he had the feeling that his comic book career wasn't over. Now, that was in the ending of the book here, and on the audio book I have on cassette by Walt Disney Records. But on the episode, though, they ended the episode where his mother found ink on his hand, and she was trying to wipe it off, and then all of a sudden she sees a new comic book says, "The Adventures of the Colossal Elastic Boy." And as she let go of Skipper's stained hand, his hand came back, and Skipper dressed up as a superhero and says, "Stretchin'!" You know, I love this book so much. And I wish that somebody should do a sequel to it. I mean, I wish that somebody should do a sequel, but much to my surprise, I found a YouTuber who loves Goosebumps comic books, and the YouTuber is none other than Zach Baby TV. check up his channel. He does a lot of reviews of all the books. And this is his YouTube profile, but this is what he really looks like. And here he is reading Attack of the Mutant. It's his intro. Oh, and Zach Baby TV, if you're watching this, I want to tell you something. You did an audio story of Goosebumps Return of the Mutant, and I had to say, it really satisfied my urge for the second story of the book. But I wish that I should help you out for some voice acting, because, by the way, I am the multi-voice reviewer. I do all the voices that you cannot even think about. Exactly. You know, this guy is unfreaking believable. Zach. But if you're watching this review, I hope you enjoyed it. But anyway, there's a lot of things going on. Now, one thing that kind of bothered me a lot. Now, this has been giving me the red ass. I have seen Goosebumps comic book adaptations. And they're like 3 stories in one comic book. But nobody had never done a comic book adaptation of Attack of the Mutant. Come on, folks! Somebody should get to it. I really want it. I want the adaptation of Attack of the Mutant right now! Sorry. Sometimes when some things doesn't seem right, I do get overexcited over certain things. And one thing bothers me is nobody making the comic book adaptation of Attack of the Mutant. And I would love to spend all my money to buy that. But there's other things that's kind of interesting. I mean, check out the different colors. Different designs on the cover. Unlike the cover of this Attack of the Mutant, there's even one from England where it looks more like this. Looks like he's soaking in the sulfuric acid in this one. And there was probably in Eastern Europe or maybe France or something, where the cover looked more like this. Which I have to say, it looks kind of neat. But I just like the original itself. And when they did the episode, they did a Goosebumps Presents TV book, where it's just an adaptation to the episode. I don't have it, but I would like to have that in my collection as well. Because this one is based more to the episode than the original novel. And I always kept asking all the fans, are there any, now, believe it or not, one thing I did enjoy, though, is I did play this PC game of Goosebumps Attack of the Mutant. And I love the game. I love it a lot. One thing is pretty neat about the game, you play this character, you have this Attack of the Mutant comic book, and then all of a sudden you start meeting the villains and the League of Good Guys. And a little known fact, if you beat the game, and if you collect all the costume parts, you show up as a superhero, and you become the new member of the League of Good Guys. But if you didn't collect the costume parts, you don't show up. And of course, the Masked Mutant did show up in another Goosebump game called Goosebumps Horror Town. Now, I have to end this review because it's getting too long, so get ready for the second parter coming up soon. So, for those of you who enjoy it so far, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe, and get ready for number 2, folks.